The following is brought to you by Total Seal Piston Rings, the leader in ring seal technology. TotalSeal.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Hidden Horsepower, presented by Total Seal Piston Rings, the leader in ring seal technology, TotalSeal.com. We have had so many great episodes with the best of the engine building world. We've got another one coming at you. Shaver Specialties Racing Engines. Ron Shaver going to be our guest along with my co-host, Lake Speed Jr. Lake, we got another one that is going to be like a blast from the past for you, one of your racing engine building mentors.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have the T-shirt. I'm actually wearing my Shaver Specialties T-shirt right now. This is where, I got my start, really. I mean, we talked about before, Mark Cronquist and at Gibbs being able to, work on the cup stuff and do a lot of theoretical stuff. But, Ron and all the guys there at Shaver Specialties, they're the ones that really opened the doors and welcomed me in, treated me just like family. And allowed me to do all kinds of crazy stuff on the engine dyno back there, where we learned so much stuff, especially at Joe Gibbs Driven, developing the oils and stuff. All that was done, right there at Shaver Specialties. And so this episode is very near and dear to my heart to be able to let Ron be able to kind of share with the Hidden Horsepower listeners, so much of the wisdom and experience he has, because, he's shared it with me and made me a better person because of it.
And speaking of sharing, all you listeners out there, we encourage you to share this show with your friends. If they'll like it. Gearheads, engine guys, people on the quest for knowledge. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, SoundCloud, and subscribe, of course, because we've always got new episodes coming out. So without further ado, from Shaver Specialties Racing Engines, Mr. Ron Shaver. Ron, what do you think about what Lake just had to say?
Well, he kind of barged into the shop and took it over. It was, I thought he was crazy, but we worked on the oil and we worked. We built him a little engine so he could run, and taught him how to run the dyno and let him have at it. And now you've got driven oil. It's great oil, and we were real happy to be part of it.
So let's start at the beginning, though. I always like to get a little background from our guests in that, how did you get here? What was the beginning? I understand that your dad, World War II veteran and a machinist, and that clearly gave you the bug, or at least the interest to be involved.
Yeah, I was just a kid when I started. I laying on the beach. We live at the beach and surfing, and my dad didn't like that, so I went to work for him. And he had a company that he worked for, Joe Hunt Magnetos. It's an old company, and his son Tom saw that I was building these engines, and he wanted one, so he actually got me involved in sprint cars. I didn't even know what a sprint car was in 1975, but he taught me everything I know about that and got me involved with the right people, which makes a big difference in the sport. And that's how we got started. So we started in a small place in my dad's shop, and we had an engine dyno and a few machines, and it kind of grew into a 16,000-foot building and two dynos and spintrons and 30 people, and it's got a little out of hand for me, but that's where we are today. We've done so much and learned so much about sprint car racing. We were the first to use the aluminum block, and I'll never forget Ed Donovan came down after we had won the feature at Ascot. He stuck a $100 bill in my pocket, and a $100 bill in Dean's pocket, and a $100 bill in Bruce Bomey's pocket, and said, "From now on, kids, that's going to be a Shaver Donovan." So that's how the Donovan block was born. So I guess we kind of helped that situation. We were using a Chevy block that had bullet holes and everything else in it, but he fixed it for us, and that's all you see today are Donovan blocks and sprint car racing.
Amazing.
And,
you're an innovator. Just one other point of note that Lake mentioned to me, because all of us, I think, that are involved in the car culture or certainly respect the California car culture like to swing through an In-N-Out burger. And I understand that there's a connection from your family to In-N-Out Burger. Share that with us.
Yeah, that's a French fry cutter. All the sprint car racers have them. They see it and they want them, but it's basically a manual machine that you push a potato through and it makes a French fry. And that was my grandfather's thing. He started that in 1936, and we're still making them today. We still make them by the ton, and there's lots of components with them. So there's so many of them out there. We sell so many, because it wears out. We sell tons of parts. So that's still going in the same shop. And then we build hydraulic lifters for comp cams also in the same shop. And then the engine shop is on the other side. So that's kind of what we do now. We build lifters and ship potato cutters and racing engines.
a very diverse customer clientele.
Yeah, very diverse. So you have to be a little bit. So you go in there and you put your engine shop hat on, and then 5 minutes later you got your potato cutter hat on, and then the lifters, same thing. It's just it's a never-ending battle. I'm getting a little old. I'm 71 now, and it's getting harder to do, but I still enjoy it.
Lake, jump in here.
Well, it's a fun place. It's a really cool shop. It's my favorite place to go work in dyno. And like I said, Ron, he said I've kind of barged in. I probably did. He did. They taught me how to run the dyno, and we started off with the fruit, water brake dyno, and then a couple of years ago, Ron got really stepped up and got a Black Widow, dyno from Superflow. This got the dual servos on it, and that's a really nice dyno, and it's all automated. And we with the testing we were doing on the oil stuff, we ran that thing all day, every day. We put 250 dyno hits on an engine in a week, pretty easy, and go through doing wear testing, swapping 2 camshafts a day in and out of the engine. So between me and Don and Ron and Dan and Keith and all the guys, we were hard at it, and we got that dyno running so well and got all the bugs worked out in it. Obviously, one time about killed Ron, but we got everything worked out and got the thing running really good. And because where the shop is in Torrance, California, that we're not far from the beach. The weather there is so great that the repeatability on that dyno, especially with that little mule engine we've got there, was just incredible. You've never seen anything repeat like that. You can sit there and run, 24 sweep tests in a 2-hour period of time, and the run number 5 and run number 20 are within a couple of tenths of each other, which for a water brake dyno, that's just unheard of, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's an amazing engine. The guys, they can change a camshaft. I watched them do it. They can change a camshaft in 10 minutes, and it has, we wore the cam bearings out in one of them, and that engine is phenomenal that it's still running. But, it doesn't make a lot of horsepower, about 450, but it always makes 450. And he really learned, because the engine was so consistent, what he was doing with the oil. And then, of course, he started another business that checks the oil. So now we can see what's in the oil. He's definitely a leader in the oil department. I worked with a lot of people over the years. Mark Mitchell from Pennzoil, and nobody ever covered oil as heavy as Lake does.
How did he almost kill you?
I don't know which time. Yeah.
Well, the new dyno when the flywheel about came off.
Oh,
the thing
yeah. Oh, yeah. we had an effective installation on the drive shaft, and I walked in there to look at it, and I saw it was coming loose, and I got him to shut it off, but it was probably three more rounds and it hit me. So yeah, that was close.
That was close.
Yeah, there's been a lot of close ones. We do a lot of blown engines and stuff, and one day we had an explosion, major explosion. It blew all 4 doors off of the dyno. And so I could tell you stories forever about the dyno. You run 2 engines a day, so there's a lot of engines going through there, and it's hard to believe all the stuff that we get away with and not get hurt. So, but yeah, so that's pretty much what we still do every day. But lately Lake has been into rings, so we're starting on a project there. I mean, I've learned a lot about rings over the period of time because the Donovan used a ductile sleeve, and we had to find something that was compatible with it. And we've done that with the help of the Moriartys and guys like that. I mean, we were with Joe when Joe was in Jersey, so he's been a long road for both of us.
Yeah, that's the thing is when I first came there, working, and we started on the engine, we started off, as the old Molly rings and stuff, and you guys were doing the sprint car stuff and been running Total Seal gapless rings and the sprint car stuff probably before I was even born. An
interesting story. We actually went to that ring because the guys in the field were checking the engines, and they're always giving me weird numbers, so when I went to the Total Seal ring, I actually went to it for a different reason other than performance. I went to it because it was consistently good leak down, so I could tell if they had a problem. And then we started seeing performance gains. And then when we went to skinny rings and a little bit rougher bore, we saw some huge gains in vacuum. It's nothing for us to pull 17 inches of vacuum with a Total Seal ring and still have 8 or 10 inches at 8,000, which is unheard of. I mean, 5 years ago, you couldn't do that. And it's all ring technology and a little bit piston, but mostly ring. And what we're doing with the piston sealing and how we do it. So in other words, there's 4 or 5 ways to put the rings in there. So the higher you get them in the bore, the better it is. But you've got a valve pocket in the way, and so you've got to figure it out. And this new ring is really pretty good. I haven't tried it yet, but I hear it's pretty good.
Well, that's one thing with the little engine, that was, always hurt my feelings, right? We would sit there and try all these different things with oil, try to make a couple more horsepower. And then when we went to the 0.7 millimeter, diamond finish ring, from the 043 ring, it's like 13 horsepower. It's like, hurt your feelings, right? It's like 3 or 4 horsepower from oil, and there's 13 in the daggone piston ring, and you're like, what? But that's probably where, I really got my first experience of like, wow, there really is a lot to be gained in the piston ring deal just by, going to the smaller ring and the different finishes and stuff.
The gas ports and where we put them and how we put them, all that stuff, once we got a good diamond ring in there, you could start moving them around and make some improvement. This new ring, I guess Lake could tell you how it works, but it looks like it's going to be even better, and I haven't run it yet. So I'm looking forward to doing that next week, actually, if we get back to work. So.
Oh, yeah, the gas-ported rings would be neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the gas-ported rings is good.
It should be real good. And we're running rings that the size of oil rings. I mean, we're running rings at a millimeter, and smaller, 0.7 of a millimeter. And in back when we were racing, I think our thinnest ring was a 16th. So that was worth, honest to God, if you put that in a little motor and tested it, and you went to the skinny ring, it'd probably be 30. It's that much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It would be interesting if we ever had a time to take a little Oscar, the mule motor there, and put like a 16th ring in it and see how much it would back up, just from having the 0.7 millimeter ring in there. And I say when all this stuff lifts and we can get back to it, that's going to be the neat thing is they'll take the gas ported ring and put the gas ported ring in there in place of a gas ported piston and see what it does, because we know what that motor tells us. I mean, that motor doesn't vary. And if it shows us anything, we're going to be able to know.
We're going to do that real soon. But, with the technology's improved everywhere. I mean, if you look at the rings and you look at the oil pumps and what we're doing, I don't think anybody's made any horsepower with anything other than rings and vacuum right now. I mean, in the last year or two, we probably gained 20 horsepower just with rings and vacuum. And, that's a bunch when you're looking for 5. So,
exactly.
I mean, these engines they'll make 950. I would have never believed that, because when I started building engines in 75, 450 was the norm. And
now you're double.
Now we're at double. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Bob Williams has done a good job with his head, and everybody can get them. So all the engines are pretty good anymore, of the builders that we race with anyhow. There's really so much more that we can go. I mean, every time we look at the engine, we think of something else that right now we're on rings. So that's where we are. But and the engine weight, I mean, we've got the engine weight down to 350 pounds again. And when you think about what an iron engine weighed, you can see why we got so dominating back in the 70s with an aluminum engine, because we were so much lighter. So,
exactly.
It was amazing.
It's, the previous episode of this, I had Mark Cronquist on, and he's doing that desert off-road engine, which, you have a big, long history in the desert off-road stuff. And I don't know if I told you this the other day, but Mark tried that total conform ring, which is the one with the radial slots on the back, and he said it had a huge impact on reducing blow-by and increasing vacuum. So that's something else you probably ought to look at, at some point with the sprint car stuff is, a total conform diamond finish on the top to see what that does. Like I said, keep trying, right? Keep looking at different things.
Yeah, that's all you can keep doing. It, now we've gotten so sophisticated with the engines, and the engines are so much. There's so much money in them. I mean, a good engine's $60,000, and there's just 100 ways to go with the weight and what we're doing with the engine. But I think probably the next big gain is going to be in the rings, and then we'll go back to the rocker gear. But it just never ends. You're constantly doing stuff, and there's a lot of builders now, so it's real competitive. I mean, when I started building engines, there was one other engine builder that was on our level, and that was Earl Gertie. And the thing that got him is we had an aluminum block, and he didn't have an aluminum block, so we had a bit of an advantage. But there was only 2 engine builders. I used to build the engines in Pennsylvania and Indiana. I build them all over. But now there's an engine builder in every state that's comparably as good as me or Gertie was, So it's changing. But, the market is getting bigger, and it's very, very competitive. There's only about 3 or 4 cars in the world of outlaws that can, keep up with each other. They're that, and every week you come to the track, and some guy's done something that made it run better, and then you got to go back and figure out how he did it. It's competitive.
The neat thing is to see, like, the Chili Bowl, right? How big the Chili Bowl just continues to grow. How many cars are the Chili Bowl each year now? And you got guys, all kinds of Cup guys. It's with Casey Kane and Tony Stewart and Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just dirt racers that are you got the best of the best coming from all over the world.
And they're all cheated up. From what I understand, all those Chili Bowl cars are cheated up somehow, which kind of makes it cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's no rules, so you can do anything you want. So, I mean, hell, there was a guy that went down in there. I'll never. Andy Bondia was his name, and he went in there. And he had a ski on the left front, so you could do about anything that you want to do with the engine and the car. They're very, very light, and they're already 800 pounds. I think these are probably in the 700s. I may be wrong, but they're pretty light. The sprint cars are a lot heavier, but it's like Blake said, we got all these great drivers coming into the sport that the people come. So it's good for the World Outlaws. It's good for Lake. It's good for me. It's good for all the other builders, to keep competitive. And, last year we've kind of dominated for 10 years or so. And now last year, Rob Capetta, he got in there, and he's just as good as all of them again. So it makes it an interesting scenario. And if you haven't been to a good World Outlaw race, it's amazing.
Yeah. You go to Eldora or Knoxville, that's to me, that's my favorite form of racing. And I'm a NASCAR guy, right? And I race go-karts and stuff, man. But God, I love watching the sprint cars race. And I just, it's been neat, all the years of us working together and being able to follow Donny and get to know Donny Schatz and watch his career and see what they did. And obviously when he joined up with Tony Stewart, and of course Tony was still at Gibbs at the time, and just being able to be like, somewhat of a big racing family there, that was really neat to be able to be part of all that. Real special times,
Yeah, Tony he's been a large part of what we do the last 10 years, because we work for him, and he gives you an open wallet, and you can go wild with it, and he expects results, and if we give him results, he just keeps it going, It's it's a lot different than it was in 1975, trust me. We came in there with a two-wheel,
450 horsepower, right? And now you're at 900.
We had a two-wheel trailer. We had one right rear and one engine, one set of headers. So if you broke, you were sitting on the trailer. But nowadays, you go in there and they got 2 or 3 cars put together and 6 engines under the bonnet ready to go, and it's changed. I can remember way back when we Bobby Allen, he used to come to the racetrack. He didn't even have a right rear. he would get a right rear and he'd go racing, And
oh wow,
he's probably one of the first and the last guy that was sprint car racing back then. That knows what it's like to get to the track. Nowadays the guys are a bit spoiled, but he's probably the last one that's still involved heavily. I'd say he and there's a guy named Ken Woodruff out in Oklahoma that I worked for
Kenny.
years. He's real good. He's quite a guy too, and he's still working on it, but he's getting older. But he was a big influence on my life. What he did for me, and he got me hooked up with Spurlock, and the rest is history. And he and Tom Hunt were probably the 2 most influential guys. So, but there's so many things that we've done with the engine. The oil pumps. I put the oil pump on the front, and then C.K. Spurlock made an oil pump, and the guy that I was walking by I was at a boat race, and I was walking by a boat, and I noticed he had the oil pump on the back, driving off the back of the cam, and I said, well, gosh, why couldn't I do that on the front? So that's how that came about.
Really?
And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. And so we did that, and Tommy Davis we built the first ones for us, and then he passed on, and the company's since changed hands. It's still going. But he built the first pumps, and then CK built the rest of them. And now we've got PRC and, Barnes. I mean, we got so many good pump manufacturers. It's crazy. But
I know Chris and those guys at PRC. That's just the newest one, right? Is the one with the drop gear, where basically you got more sections and it's more compact. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he built that. That was Paul Kistler's idea, and it worked real well. I don't know if he's got him working yet. He was working on the weight. He was a little worried about the weight, but
okay.
He said it ran really good. I think they had one at the trade show, if I recall. But yeah, all of that stuff we made, and the rear pump, putting that back there, that was Carl Kinzer's deal, and that changed the way we did everything with the fuel. So I mean, there's a lot of, I guess what they're trying to say is there's a lot of ingenuity that goes out at sprint car racing that you don't see anywhere else. You go over to a modified or something, and they've all got the same thing. And sprint car racing, you'll see different stuff. When you've been doing it since '75, I don't know how many years that is, but you see a lot of different things. I've seen so many things, so it's been a very interesting road.
To go from 450 horsepower to 950, and then, I'm sure what was back in 1975, what was, the highest RPM you'd typically see if you didn't have a problem back then?
Oh God, 7,000 would be a big number. Now we're 92, 93.
Right.
It depends on who's the engine builder and what cam he's got. This new Ford project that we did with Andy Durham, it opened a lot of windows and really taught us a lot what we can do with a Chevy. But that engine right out of the box, the first engine that we built, it made 940. So, he's since got it way up there. So we'll see how they run in the car. We haven't had that chance, but he did win one in Florida on a big track. So I think he's pretty good. So we'll see.
I was going to say, from 7,000 RPM to 9,000 RPM, it's not just 2,000 RPM, because as that RPM goes up, all those valve train forces, all the dynamics of everything, they square. It's not linear, so working with guys like Billy and Wayne and Danny Jessel, when you think about what you did, I'm sure that was like the valve train stuff enabled that higher RPM. Now you have that higher RPM. Now you're back to rings and pistons and things again, because now your engine speed's so much higher than you had before. Like you said, it's that cycle.
Yeah. Danny Jessel, he was a pioneer, and he's got all this stuff going the right direction for weight. And, when you start looking at the valve jobs that we do, I mean, I used to do a 45 and at 3 angles. Now we got 8 angles and a 55 or a 60 seat, and all that stuff creates problems, but it makes power. So we create the problem, and then we figure out how to fix it. In that case, we chromium nitrited the valve, and that fixed it. And then, of course, the valves were going skinny, so they popped the ends off at the keeper groove. So we kind of come up with a new keeper and a new retainer, and that fixed that. It's just a continuous battle. I mean, there's always R&D going on in sprint car racing that nobody sees. And a lot of the builders don't see what we're doing because, we're doing it at home. But they all get it eventually. And so if you get an advantage for a while, it's good to go. But other than that, you're not going to get an advantage very long, because these guys are pretty sharp, So,
like I said, there's a lot of competition, a lot of guys working.
And and you got new builders coming in, and, Ryder's a good builder, and he just comes in and he gets you honest again and get working on it. There's just always something going on. And one of the reasons it goes on is because the Outlaws haven't changed the rules. So if they change the rules, that screws everything up. But when they let you do what you've got to do to get it done, it makes it interesting, and that's why you see all these track records being broken finally, because, they cut the tire back and then everybody figured out how to make the motors run with them. And now you're seeing track records everywhere you go. So
yeah,
it's a pretty interesting sport. As you know, you're there at the shop. I mean, you're always seeing something different,
Oh, exactly. Always.
Yeah. So,
and continuing to make gains all the time. I mean, like I said, you're 950 horsepower now, and I remember when I first started coming around, it was, mid 800s was a pretty daggum good number. 870 was like, wow. And then I remember the first 900 one, we were like, whoa, holy moly, 900 horsepower. And then Donnie goes to Knoxville and wins the Knoxville Nationals again,
Yeah.
And to think 950 even back then seemed crazy, but yet here we are,
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, I mean, he's so good at Knoxville, it usually takes something mechanical to knock him out of the fight. Like last year, we had a distributor that didn't fit proper and come loose, and that ruined the first night, so we got it fixed, and of course he was behind, but he's pretty phenomenal race car driver there, I'll say that. And we have a good package there, so it's it's a good place to go.
Ron,
I love Knoxville.
Ron, I've got a question for you, something that comes up from time to time. And you've been kind of touching on it, but I know that you and Lake work together a lot, whether it be on the oil and innovation is something that we're all very interested in. And there's the ideas that work, and then there's the ideas that don't work. And then maybe they'll work in the future, or maybe they started out not working, but then they ended up working. But do you have any interesting angles on things that you thought might be a good idea and then turned out to not be? Like, failure stories that are teachable moments.
Yeah, I have a lot of them. I have to think about it, but I had an idea to make a light piston, and I got too thin in the sections, and anyhow, it kept breaking. So we kept fixing it and bigging it up. But by the time I got all done with it, which took about 6 months, I was right back where I was on the weight. So that was a little bit embarrassing. So the piston manufacturers are really doing a good job to answer your question there. But I did try some stuff on my own. We tried some real skinny valves that were hollow, and some guys have success with that, but we didn't have any success with it. So we went back. We always have a place to revert back to. In other words, where we are, it's working real good. So when I leap out one way or another and do something, I can always get back pretty quick, because I don't ever make a change where I've got to rebuild a block or rebuild a head. I always make it something simple. Sometimes you get carried away and you get so far into it that you can't figure out what you did. And believe it or not, it doesn't sound like a big thing, but it's hard to get back to where you were if you change too much. So, for instance, we had a light rod that we were using, and we decided not to use it anymore because we saw some issues with a rod. And so to do that, I had to take all the cranks and rebalance them. And that, if you ever balance a Sonny Bryant crank, it's hard because it's real hard. So it takes about 3 days to get it balanced right, with a lot of help from him. And then we had to put it back together. But I mean, we lost probably 2 months messing with that, and it just happens. It's just stuff that happens. We use premium parts, and sometimes we make the premium parts a little bit thin or something, and it goes away. That's probably the worst. I really haven't had any big problems in my career. I mean, we broke everything like everybody else, but we never really had any major problems where I couldn't fix it, and get going again.
Well, that's the thing that you taught me, and obviously Don, I think one reason why we worked so well together doing the testing out there was that we never would change more than one thing at a time. Anytime you did something, there's only one change at a time. Never change this, and this, and that, because if you change more than one thing, you don't know what really helped or hurt. Right? One thing you could have done could have made. Let's say you made 3 changes and it's up 10 horsepower. Well, you don't know if it was maybe one of the changes was worth 20, and then another one was minus 10. So you netted 10, but you don't know. So that was one thing that's always been great is that. Yeah,
and one of the things too that made it a little better for us as engine builders, when you started checking the oil, we could see what was in the oil and we could tell what was rubbing harder than the other. And I told Don to start watching that, and we actually found some things that way that were going to cause a trouble now, down the road. So, every time somebody does something new, it puts a piece of the puzzle together. I don't know, you think you're reaching your limit with the engine, but I don't know if there is a limit sometimes. Sometimes when you think, well, I can't do that, but then pretty soon you're at 9,200 and you hold it on for an hour and it runs at 9,200, doesn't hurt anything. You couldn't do that. And that's all because of things like the oil checking and all the tools that we have today compared to where we were 25 years ago is insane. Our stuff is better built. It's better. It's more precision, and it all makes a difference.
Oh, I'm sure they're having the rim tank, right? You get that rim tank out back. That just having the surface finish. What difference that makes?
We rim all our gears, and the Shaver Westmar gear drive is all rimmed, and it's a great piece, and it just keeps getting better. And the story to that is that's another story. But what happened is that's a Summers gear drive, and Bob Summers died. He was a runner, and he was running, and he had a heart attack and died. And no one could make it, and Bob Westfall called me up and said, we got to do something. We got no drives. So that's how we started making a gear drive. Dad had got on his stuff and got it all done, and now we make them in the house. But that's how the gear drive got better, and because the real gear drive is the same gear drive they were using in 1955, and that's how that started. So and now it's truly great. We changed the gear material to 9310 and from 8620, and that quit breaking, and once in a while we knock a teeth off, and now it's good, and just make it fit better. And when you got a custom block like a Donovan block, and you make a change, you can tell him, and he can change his machine, and he can go from there.
So for people who are listening that may not know when we say rim, REM, explain to them what we mean by rim.
Rimming is a polishing process. It's a special fluid. The drum of it's $2,800, but what you do is you tumble it with a special stone, and we cut it. We call it the cutting mode, and we cut it, and then the machine has a meter on it, and it switches over to the REM fluid, and the REM fluid helps polish it. That's how you get the real high luster, and it's real hard to damage 9310 that's heat treated, or a gear. For instance, they're doing the rear end gears. Anything that's hard is ideal for remming, and it just makes the finish better, and it takes all the stress risers out, and it makes a real good looking part too. And well, that's
they
come
do look
along
great.
in the last 10 years, 12 years. It's real good. It works great.
Yeah.
It made our gear driver look a lot better. And then what we did then is we started using lightning holes and doing all kinds of stuff like that because we could get all the part deburred properly, you know. So
Exactly. I say when you make it smooth like that and to polish it, now you've got more load carrying here. You're not you don't have these big peaks now. You got more wider flat. So it's like doing push-ups on your palms versus doing push-ups on your fingertips. You can only do, a fraction of the amount of push-ups on your fingertips because the stress is so high versus doing them on your palms. And that rim polishing, does that. It's no different than the reason we do the diamond lapping on the piston rings. When you diamond lap the piston ring, it makes it smoother. It feels better.
Yeah,
it's just because it's flatter.
It is good, that if you don't do that, the ring it'll kill the piston, So, there's several ways to skin the cat there, but that's one way, and the other way is to molly coat them. But that's a problem because there's only one company that can do it. So probably the way you're going about it is the best way. I've been using Total Seal rings for almost as long as I've been in business. And, I used to think he was crazy when he cut that ring that thin, and now it's twice that thin, and it's still no problem. And I can remember Joe, he had a place back in New Jersey. I never visited, so I didn't know what it looked like, but he had some good stuff in there to test. So I used to send stuff back in to test. And since then I bought all that stuff, but, he was quite a guy. He knew what he was doing. And,
well, like I said, it's the change of materials, just like on the gear drives, you go from, 8620 to 9310, you made a material improvement, and then you do the surface finish improvement, and now you can start doing things to lighten and do things like that because you got a better material that allows you to do different things and make a better part. No different than what they did in the old days. They had cast iron rings, and they had to cut them, and well, now you got, tool steel rings. The material's so much better, you can get away with things that you couldn't get away with because the material's so much better.
Right. It's just better material, and again, time has taught the metal people how to make the metal better, and there's less flaws in it, and I mean everything is just better than it ever was. So, we have some high tech companies coming into the industry, and it's going to be interesting the next 20 years. So, I don't see the horsepower. I mean, they're not gaining it like crazy, but, we gain 20 horsepower. That's a lot. If you gain 10 horsepower a year, which doesn't sound out of reason anymore, in 10 years, that's 100, So you're at 1,000. How they're going to hook it up in the race car is beyond me. But, the guys actually come in and tell you the motor doesn't run, and you look at them like they're crazy. But, I remember Don, we built a new one and put it in, and he'd come in and he said, Jesus, this thing don't run any better than the other one. And I looked down and the spark plug wire had come loose. And I said, it wasn't missing? He said, yeah, a little bit. So I put that plug wire on there, and I said, go out again at Eldora. And he went, 12.8 and came in and he was grinning. That's the only time I've ever seen him grin. He doesn't grin very often. He's real serious.
No, he's poker face. He's very poker face. You're right.
Yeah. So we hit a home run there, but a lot of things are going on. That's for sure.
Ron, this has been tremendous to hear you kind of just, you and Lake kind of just back and forth on the ebb and flow and evolution of engine building for sprint cars. Lake, any final thoughts for Ron before I ask him to maybe give a little knowledge to the future engine builders or the people who are, himself, 30, 40, 50, 30 or 40 years ago. Lake, any final questions for Ron?
Well, I don't really have a question. I have more of just a thank you, Ron, for taking your time, to do this, and thanks for your patience and your guidance with me. I'm standing here looking at my desk right now, a picture of me and you at Buca di Beppo with your dad and everybody years ago to Christmas party.
Oh, yeah.
Just the friendship and everything and assistance, along the way. And thank you for sharing, so much of your story with the listeners today. I think we just appreciate it.
Okay. We appreciate you too, Lake.
And Ron, let's we appreciate all of you guys for what you have done to elevate the sport that we love to the point that it is, various facets of motorsports, sprint cars, drag racing, stock cars, et cetera. It takes everybody to grow it. But let me ask you this, and this is how we conclude every episode of Hidden Horsepower. I like to assume that there is a young person that is maybe the next you out there who loves this, that's trying to devote their life to this. What kind of advice or wisdom would you give that person on how to be successful?
Well, I would give him, I'd tell him what he'd do. I'd sit him down and I'd tell him what he needed to do. So, for instance, take it one step at a time and don't try and get to the top right away. In other words, it takes a while to work your way up the ladder and get to the top. And I think probably the best thing I could tell him is to just take it slow and have your ears open and your eyes open and look at what the old guys are doing, because they've been doing it a while, and you'll learn. So I actually learned that from my dad, and guys never listen to their dad, but I did watch him, and now that he's gone, I use all the things he taught me. So I think I would recommend that just take it slow and easy and don't get too far off base. In other words, if you see something that looks like it'll work, look at it, but don't put it into competition and damage your name. Keep your head straight and just move slowly. That'd be my biggest thing, because everybody's in a hurry, and that's how you get in trouble, including me. I'll do it too. But, the good guys that end up on top are the ones that took it slow. And you gotta get thick skin. You gotta have thick skin in the sport. They're going to pick at you. And you gotta learn to take it, because the engine builder is the guy that gets picked on the most. So I think that's what I'd recommend.
Ron, thank you very much. Lake, final thoughts?
Just a lot of wisdom there, like you said. I think that's just both Mark said it and Ron said it. You think you'd reached the limit of what the engine can do, but you still keep finding things. So if you have that kind of that humble approach, you just keep working on it and don't get too far afield of yourself, and just keep chipping away at it. Next thing you know, you look up and you're 10 years down the road and you did get 100 horsepower, but you didn't get it at once. You just got it bit by bit, piece by piece, just slow, steady, chipping away. You get there.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
And a metaphor for life outside of engine building, talking about saving money, talking about trying to be successful in any career. Ron, great job. Shaver Specialties Racing Engines, California, Lake Speed, barges in the door, changes things. We appreciate you guys sharing your story here on Hidden Horsepower. Ron, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
And there he goes, Ron Shaver. How about that, Lake? You guys, it was one of those conversations where you could hear that so much history between the two of you and some playful banter back and forth, but really a lot of information conveyed. 8-angle valve jobs. That's what I'm thinking about.
So the funny thing is I was catching myself when we were talking. It's like, this is just like me and him going to Taco Tuesday, at the end of the day. Is this, I'm out there at the shop usually a week at a time, just testing things. We'll line it up, like you said, and we'll come out and we'll just work all week. And then we'll go out to dinner each night or whatever. And this is what we talked about. This is what we kind of do. We sit there and reminisce, talk about old times or talk about different ideas and things like that. It's, so I'm sorry, we probably dominated the whole conversation, and it was, I'm not sure if anybody else enjoyed that or not, but it was always fun though.
Listen, they're all going to be different, and that's what makes Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal a must for subscribing and writing a review. We have had so many great guests, and the personal relationships are the reason that they're going to be forthcoming with interesting information about things that worked, things that didn't work, new technology, what's good, what's bad, easy stuff. And I loved what he said about advice to the next generation: slow down. Right? It's not something you hear on a regular basis, but take the time to learn, to build confidence, to get stable, and make deliberate moves. I loved hearing that, and I also liked that he said that kids don't listen to their dads, and they don't, but they should. And there's
exactly.
all kinds of great advice coming out of this, Lake. I think you did a great job, and I really appreciated being able to check it out, be a fly on the wall in many ways, for hearing you two just having great conversation given the circumstances, especially after you nearly killed the man.
Well, exactly, yeah. More than once.
Well, Lake, great job. Any final thoughts for our audience out there, engine builders, people with projects, people who are working to find a little hidden horsepower in their engine? If they have any questions, what should they do?
Well, they need to call us, right? I'd be happy to hand the throne back over to Keith and let him take it back over doing the co-hosting job, which he's excellent at, because, he is the ring whisperer. I call him that all the time. He's the guy that knows. And so if somebody's working on a project, they need to, call us, call the 800 number, talk to Keith, Kevin, or Bobby, one of those guys. And obviously we have a lot of resource now on our YouTube channel. So we'd love people to come subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to have more videos, things like, showing you how to properly measure ring groove depth, to make sure you get the right fit. Because there's a little bit of hidden horsepower there by getting those ring groove dimensions correct, to having, not too much clearance, not too little clearance. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You want it just right to get it to run the best it can. So the YouTube channel is going to be a great resource for a lot of that information. It's available 24/7 that way. And then, during business hours in Arizona, pick up the phone, call a tech line, talk to the guys. They'll help you out.
Simple as that. Lake, thank you so much. It has been great having you on for 3 consecutive episodes here on Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal. Your first few, but certainly not your last. It's been a great time, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Joe.
He is Lake Speed Jr. I am Joe Castello. You can find me on Twitter at WFOJoe, and it is always a great honor to connect and hear some of the best engine builders in the business. For more information, you can hit TotalSeal.com or call 800-874-2753. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, write a review, Spotify, SoundCloud, or go to the YouTube channel and never miss an episode of Hidden Horsepower by Total Seal.